Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. My name is John Sherman. I'm with the Screening Room AV. Some of you that are joining us are already well familiar with our company and how we do business. But there's a great many of you that come from the digital bits or Facebook or elsewhere that may not be really familiar with us. So there's our contact info above on the screen. Hopefully you're seeing that. And let's see, I got a chat here. And whoops, sorry. So we are the Screening Room AV. We're a Colorado-based company. We are currently Colorado's top-rated home theater AV company. We have 129 Google reviews. Every single one of them is 5 stars, nothing less. And if you take the time to read them, you'll see that most of them are novels that people have gone on and on about how we do business. And we have kind of a unique approach to things. And I know you don't really want to hear me talk today, but I want to give you a little bit of background about who we are for anybody who isn't familiar with us from the past interactions or from our newsletter. So we're kind of famous for doing scientifically controlled, level matched comparison between products. We're much more interested in how a product actually performs than what the marketing claims about it may be. And we made our name, I think our big splash back in 2017 when we did a scientifically controlled, double-blind, controlled listening test between the JBL M2 and the Rebel Salon 2, which are 2 of the top-rated speakers on the market. One a professional monitor, and the other one a highly regarded consumer speaker. And you can see in the lower right there, we built a blind, an acoustically transparent blind mask that we hid the speakers. The lights are up there, so you can kind of see through it. But what we did was we hid the speakers from view, we precisely level matched them, position matched them, and we had about 20 people fly in from all over the country and watched us do and participated in this listening test. And so that's very much how we approach things here. We want to make sure that we're testing out marketing claims against actual real-world performance. And we do that with audio and we do that with video. And that's kind of our approach. So our unofficial tagline is scientifically justified high end. So we want to make sure that what we're selling is actually can be demonstrated to be superior rather than just claimed to be superior. And then one of the people that keeps us honest is Kris Deering. Kris Deering owns Deep Dive AV. He's one of the top AV calibrators in the world. Literally true. He consults for a great many companies, and he's available on a consulting basis and also to do calibrations. He does an expert on Lumagen, on projection, on audio, all things above. Kris, did you want to say something real quick to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thanks to the guys at the Screening Room for asking me to join this Q&A event, and look forward to hoping to answer some questions or provide some good info.
Yeah, like I said, Kris is somebody we can rely on to keep us honest whenever we do these product comparisons, because as a dealer, obviously we have a vested interest in seeing things do well or not do well. And we're all about trying to keep it honest, which brings me to the next slide here. Kris and I did this, and a company did a projector expo back in 2019 between JVC and Sony. And Kris did all the precise level matching of the projectors. We tried to equalize them in brightness, made sure they're all calibrated properly, and we hid them often from view from the people who were there, so they didn't know which projector they were looking at. And to Chris Deutsch's great pleasure, the JVC pretty much ran away with the show. Not that the Sony was a bad projector, but once we took the time to actually match the projectors and the performance specifications, brightness, contrast, all those things, as best we could, it became pretty obvious that the JVC was superior in most regards. And again, this is not to knock Sony. The Sony was a good product, but it just kind of gives you an idea of our approach. Again, trying to make sure everything is a level playing field. And that kind of brings me to my last thing that I'll say. Again, scientifically justified high end is kind of our unofficial tagline. We want to make sure that what we're selling actually can be demonstrated to be superior. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Deutsch, who you're really here to hear from. The 2 Chris's, as I like to say, are the ones you probably want to hear from much more than me. So Chris Deutsch, take it away. Tell us about these exciting new JVC projectors. I'll turn off my screen sharing and turn it over to you, sir.
Oh, hey, one quick second. Sorry, Chris, yeah. I hate to cut him off right before he starts. For anybody that is in here, I see, the participant counts at like 38. At the bottom where the stuff is, you'll see a little clicker thing that says Q&A. If anybody has questions while this is going on, if you click that, it opens up a little sidebar and you can put questions in there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't know why it was doing, I don't know if anybody else could see that, but it was doing real-time subtitles for me. I don't know why it was doing that. So anyway,
I was trying to figure that out. That was
so
that's kind of a first.
All right. Well, hopefully that's done. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. So John, thank you for hosting. Chris, thank you very much for participating again today. And to all the folks that are joining us tonight, I'm sure for some of you, it's been a pretty long day. And, JVC truly appreciates your interest in our product line. And, I got to say, looking at hearing some of the comments today and all the positive response so far to this introduction, it's just really awesome to see that. And we're very grateful. We absolutely appreciate it. So we're here to talk about 8K laser HDR, the new Ultimate, the world's first 8K input home theater projectors. And yes, that is a line of projectors. There's 3 new models that we have to talk about today: the DLA RS 2100, DLA RS 3100, and DLA RS 4100. And these are all fluorescent laser phosphor light source DILA projectors. This is something that people have been asking for, and I'm very happy to say that we're delivering this to the market. So let's get right into the good stuff with the DLA RS 4100. And I will mention I have one right up there. And in just a moment, we're going to do a little bit of a live demo to at least be able to show you some of what we're doing here. So I'm going to start out with some of the basic bullets, and then we'll drill. I promise you we'll drill down. We're not just going to read off a list of bullets tonight. I promise you that. This is our 3000 lumen model. It uses our fluorescent laser phosphor light source. And this has, you'll notice the new logo up there, 8K EShift X. This is what we're referring to as our pixel perfect 8K display with what we call a 4-way multi-axis EShift. And so this is how we show 8K on the screen. And we also have an upgraded optical block. We call it our HC optical block, which stands for high contrast. And we combine that with a very impressive 100 millimeter diameter premium all glass lens. Optics here is not just the lens, it's the entire optical block as well. This model uses our highest graded DILA imaging chips for 100,000 to 1 native contrast with infinite dynamic contrast using laser dimming. We're updating to the newest HDMI connectivity, our 48 gigabits per second HDMI on both inputs, which allows 8K 60p input and 4K 120p input. That's a very significant improvement, particularly if you're into gaming and the cool new gaming consoles. And I've got a Microsoft Xbox Series X here. I think that's what it's called. So we'll be showing that as part of our demo. This supports now the HDR10 Plus format, and it also features our dynamic tone mapping technology for regular HDR10. We call that Frame Adapt HDR, and we added an additional feature to that called Theater Optimizer, which we'll talk about a little bit. This model has the cinema filter for over 100% DCI P3 color coverage. And the warranty on this model, it's 3 years with a first-year advanced replacement. And this has a MSRP of $24,999, and it will be arriving at the end of October. This is very exciting for us. So let's look at a little more detail. And John or Chris, I don't know if you noticed, but do you see the difference versus this morning?
I'm sorry, Chris, you must illuminate us. No
I got
pun
a
intended.
new CAD drawing this afternoon of the Blue Essen laser light engine.
Ooh.
So yes, this is as up to date as it gets, guys.
You saw it here first, folks, or maybe I don't know if it was first, but close.
The morning session did not have as nice a picture on this slide. I'm going to backtrack just a touch on Blue Essent. Blue Essent is our version of our laser light engine. And it started pretty much going back to our simulation projectors, which we have been selling for quite a long time for commercial aviation flight simulators, also for the military, also some for NASA. And all of these just really demand a high level of reliability and a high level of performance. And, we have literally millions of hours of actual in-field operation validating both the reliability and the performance of this technology. And now we're bringing the third generation of this to these home theater projectors with up to 3,000 lumens. The laser design is rated for 20,000 hours of operation to its half-life, and that's based on running it at full power. Many third generation benefits. We've got a much more compact design. We have 20 laser diodes on what's called a multi-chip package, which is, again, much more compact, higher output, much more efficient, quieter operation because less heat. So ideally suited for a home theater application, as you can see. 8K in and 8K out. I'm going to say something here, and then if you don't mind, Chris, I wouldn't mind just getting a small. Chris is smiling. Getting a small amount of additional feedback from you, since you have some firsthand experience here. As I've already mentioned, we have an 8K input, 8K 60p, also 4K 120p, but let's focus on 8K for just a moment here. Along with that input, we are now using 8K EShift X to display that 8K signal. And so we are using a new high-speed driver with a 4-way multi-axis shift. And you see our attempt to kind of illustrate that in the diagram with the colorful bird there. And you also see our chart below that. And the end result is pixel perfect 8K display with 35 million addressable pixels. And just to give you a point of comparison, native 4K is about 8.8 million pixels. Our original 8K eShift, we used a double speed process where we literally flashed the screen twice for each frame of video. And that brought us to 17 million addressable pixels. And now with 8K eShift X and the 240 hertz driver, we're able to flash the screen 4 times. And we're getting over 35 million addressable pixels. And Chris, and again, without wanting to put you on the spot, but can you add any additional to what I'm saying here?
Sure. Yeah, I think this has been kind of I've have been a little bit in and out on forums today, seeing kind of the talk, and I think this is one thing that's not quite as understood. So these are not a native 8K projector. As you can see in big letters there, this is EShift X. They are still using a 4096 by 2160 panel. What they're doing here is very similar to what was done with one of the, depending on which DLP chip that they use, what they were using for essentially their 4K projectors, in that you're flashing the chip 4 times. So it's not just overlapped in one area, it's overlapped in 4. So they are overlapped pixels, but there is no scaling involved. So they are literally taking each pixel that comes in and addressing it individually fast enough that, you know, it's basically supposed to trick your eye to being the same as seeing a native 8K projector. This works really well, especially when you're talking about this kind of pixel density, because I mean, the pixel density of 4K is already pretty much at the limit for most screen sizes and everything. So even though they are technically existing in the same space, because the shift can only move in certain directions, each pixel is being shown on its own versus something that's you're only seeing half the resolution like you were seeing with the older 8K EShift that was in the RS3000. Just for reference, one of the things that I did this week is I met with Jim Peterson down in at Lumagen, and because he actually happened to have an 8K Meridio test pattern generator, and we wanted to see what it would do with an 8K signal. So I brought a RS4100, one of the new projectors that uses the EShift X, and we went through the entire, basically every test pattern it had for 8K in the Meridio 8K set. And every single pattern showed perfectly. There were no scaling artifacts or anything. So Jim Peterson was pretty blown away, as was I, that there just was no scaling artifacts at all. Everything looked exactly like you would expect it to look on a native 8K projector. So it is not native 8K, but again, at this pixel density, even in a side-by-side comparison, it's hard to say if there would really be any difference, because again, you're pretty much past the perception of resolution when it comes to 8K. But obviously we can't do that test because nobody has a native 8K to compare it to.
Thank you. I mean, and coming from you, that means a lot, and I really do appreciate it. And I'm glad you were able to bring it down there and show it.
If I can throw in here real quick, it's just pertinent question that popped in. So thanks for the honest answer. In contrast to numerous salespeople have already told me I'll be watching 8K movies later this year. Again, that's what we're trying to do, is keep all this honest and as true to what the actual data shows as possible. So thank you, Chris, both Chris's, for that honest answer.
Well, there is a little bit caveat to that. So there are probably going to be people that are saying that there will be 8K content, and there, you know, I don't know. We're in September. Who knows? You know, everything's been crazy lately. But if you're going to have any real 8K content, the likelihood of it is either going to be a gaming system, as I answered before. Yep. PC gaming, you can do 8K depending on the graphics card you have. I'm not aware. I don't think the PlayStation or the Xbox does 8K. I think they do 4K 120, but not 8K yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if you start to, just because 8K is kind of a big marketing buzz. It's been in the flat panel world for a while and everything, where you'll start seeing devices that will output 8K. Right. But that would just be a device that's scaling. So, you know, instead of an Apple TV 4K, it'd be an Apple TV 8K. The content would be the same. It would just be scaling out to 8K. Yeah. Or, you know, a player or something along those lines.
And just to that point too, just, you know, having one foot in the filmmaking world, that's some of my background is in post-production of audio and video. There, you know, we're just starting to see 8K cameras, and it's not so that they can push out 8K movies by the end of this year. Hollywood, it took them forever just to even get behind 4K. We're only starting to see 4K starting to become prevalent, and they're not, 8K is not even really on their radar as far as a delivery format for movies, which was the specific question. So,
yeah. And the other thing that I think was mentioned earlier is just simply having those additional pixels. We've got this new 8K scaling engine, and even just with regular 1080p content, the scaling is very, very clean on these models. Lines are crisp. Text doesn't have text and logos and other graphics. You don't see the jaggy edges. And I think, Chris, you were talking about earlier, just the fact that you have the additional pixels to work with allows you to get some additional benefit as well. Am I understanding what you said earlier, right?
Yes. So to me, you know, and again, this kind of stems also from, again, I was with Jim Peterson the last 2 days, and we were discussing a lot of this. Both of us agree that 8K as a resolution standpoint really isn't that much of a benefit. I'd say 99.9 infinite nines people don't sit close enough to a screen large enough that 8K is going to give you a visible benefit in resolution. I mean, honestly, you could probably say that for a pretty high percentage with even 4K.
Even 4K, yeah.
Yeah. But what it does allow for is any image processing that is being done, scaling, any kind of edge enhancement, any kind of things like that. You're now spreading that over a larger amount of pixels. So any of that processing is less obvious to you. So it's not really a benefit of that you're trying to up the resolution of what you're watching over a 4K device. It's that you're now spreading any kind of image processing that's doing to more pixels around it. So like you said, the scaling might not have as many jaggies in it that it had before or anything like that. Or if you're using any kind of sharpening tools, the odds of you seeing any kind of induced ringing from that, it would have to be pretty egregious to do that. So there will be benefits with that in how it handles that. But in terms of like the raw actual resolution of like, I have 4K, if I go to 8K, it's going to be sharper. I think that's a misnomer. If anything, if you really think about how resolution works, eventually you hit a point where things don't get sharper, they get smoother. So, you know, again, most people probably can't even see that, you know, most people's setups, you know, the Nyquist rate of 4K is probably way more resolution than they can see from a normal seating distance on even a really large screen and stuff. So as you add more and more pixels, that it's not going to get sharper, it's going to get smoother. Our eye keys in on differences in pixel structure, and if you have no pixel structure, the image therefore gets smoother.
That was one of the things that I noticed too when I was out in LA looking at some of the first 4K footage that they had scanned. It was off of IMAX footage, and the difference, just like Chris says, is in fine details, not sharpness in the way that most people think about it. It's in being able to resolve fine details. And with 8K, you just have more pixels to draw the image with.
Great feedback, and thank you both. Let's continue on with a couple of other things here. The more practical application of the actual new HDMI connection may actually be gaming, as Chris alluded to, and specifically 4K 120p. And I'm going to show you a few screen captures here, and then I'm going to show you some stuff live. And on the left, upper left, you see the JVC on-screen display, the information screen, and you're seeing 4K resolution, 2160p, and you're seeing 120A right next to that, and that refers to 120 hertz, 120 frames per second. You'll also see on this particular display that we're doing 10-bit color, we're doing BT 2020 colorimetry, and we're doing high dynamic range. So really checking all the boxes on, an excellent signal to show off everything that this projector can do. The Xbox Series X actually has a kind of like 4K test screen where you can make sure, if your TV, or in this case projector, is suitable for what it outputs, and the more little green checks, the better. The only thing that doesn't get us a green check is Dolby Vision. And of course, no home theater projector that I'm aware of supports Dolby Vision, and that's a whole different story. Yet, at the same time, the JVC works exceptionally well with Dolby Vision content. I watch it all the time from my Apple TV, and my Apple TV's smart, and my JVC projector's smart, and they know the right HDR10 base signal to send, and the JVC uses the frame adapt HDR and does dynamic tone mapping, and the results are great. So again, Dolby Vision is not available, but that's not a big deal. Also in the more advanced menu, if the game supports it, and this particular game did not, but you do have the option of 12-bit color, should you choose to do that. And I tested this with a variety of game titles that I got from Ubisoft, including The Crew 2, which we're going to show here in just a moment. And they were also very kind in helping get me connected with Microsoft. So I was actually able to get a loan on one of these Xbox Series X consoles to be able to use in the demo you're about to see. So big shout out to Ubisoft. The high contrast optical block, This is exclusively on the models that also have 8K EShift X. It's a complete redesign of the light path and all of the components therein for the best contrast within any scene. So you're not seeing a change in the specification for on-off contrast. It's still 100,000 to 1 native. But what you are seeing is that within any given frame of video with this high contrast optical block, that you're going to get better in-frame contrast, or what would commonly be called ANSI contrast. And I do believe, now I'm hesitant to say that this is exactly what I was seeing, but I did a bunch of A/B comparisons over the weekend. And I definitely believe that, part of what I was seeing was a benefit of this high contrast optical block. The other thing that this does, because it's using the light more efficiently, specifically the green component, there's approximately a 10% increase in light output. So this contributes to the higher brightness on the premium models. The RS4100 also has a 100 millimeter diameter lens. This is a larger diameter versus our 65 millimeter diameter lens. It's on the 2100 and the 3100. So because it's a larger lens, it passes more light from inside the projector, gets to the screen. And again, this in combination with the high contrast optical block and then the foundational excellent brightness of the fluorescent design is how we get to a total of 3000 lumens brightness on this projector. This has got the best resolution for 8K from corner to corner. It has our widest shift range. It's a little bit shorter throw, not a big deal, but there's a couple of systems where people have gone with the projector with this lens specifically because they needed that throw. And it has our highest precision mechanism, meaning that if you're using multiple aspect ratios with an ultra wide screen and you're using the zoom function, it's going to land on that exact spot with 4 times the accuracy of our standard lens.
It is a little bit slower, but it is extremely accurate.
You are correct. It is not setting any speed records for that change, but yes, it is accurate. So the RS3100 is the next model to talk about. And this has so much of what's on the 4100, but at a substantially lower $14,999 MSRP, also available in October. This is 2500 lumens. So it's lower in brightness. A lot of that drop is because it is using the standard 65 millimeter diameter lens, but it is keeping that premium high contrast optical block and the pixel perfect 8K display with the 4-way multi-axis shift. This is using very good DILA chips, but they grade just slightly lower. And this is rated at 80,000 to 1 native contrast. Again, infinite dynamic contrast. Everything else is the same, including this is the model in the new line where you get the cinema filter for over 100% DCI. I did notice on the forums today, there was some talk about this. When we say over 100% DCI, I mean, obviously each projector calibrates slightly different, and Chris can probably speak to that better than I can, but this is no different than what we said about the color filter last year. It's not any more, it's not any less. There's also been some conversation on how much light loss there is when you use the filter. I don't think we have final numbers. Chris, I don't know if there's anything you can share on that or...
So yeah, and I kind of want to bring this up because I've been seeing some talk in the Q&A too. So as kind of has been alluded to, I had an RS4100. I shipped it yesterday back. The unit that I was sent was a bit of a pre-production unit. It was basically to give me the opportunity to kind of go through it, go through how it works, things like that. I gave some feedback to JVC, but I'm not going to basically use that as my review sample because I want to make sure that any review, that the biggest thing that I always have as a reviewer is I want to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting a product. So I always make it a point when I get a product in, regardless of the manufacturer, to talk about the things that I find and the things that I don't find, discuss with them what the product was. And in this case, being a pre-production unit, I was seeing some things that I was like, hey, why don't we wait and make sure that I'm representing this product perfectly if I'm going to be doing this review. So I'll be getting a production sample here in the next week or two. And all of my measurements that have to do with contrast, color, calibration, anything like that are going to be done on that. I want to make sure I'm reporting on something that's more like probably what a consumer is going to get, vice, something that might have been kind of a pre-production where it's kind of thrown together to make sure it works and everything like that. So I will comment a little bit about what I saw, but I'm not going to go into detail about things that would be kind of for that review. I'm being paid by Sound and Vision to do a review of this projector. So I can't really talk about the specifics of my findings in some regards, because obviously they want that to be in the review. So you guys are gonna have to wait. That review will hopefully be published sometime in October. It's all gonna depend on when I get a sample in and making sure that everything gets done right. As for the color gamut stuff, I know at least with the sample that I measured, it was in line with what I've seen before. With the filter in place, it did cover 100% of P3. I didn't see any issues with that at all. As for how much light was lost in there, it was less than what I typically see with the 4500, but more than what I've seen with the RS3000, 2000 in the past. But again, I want to wait until I get an actual production sample to get a final number, because I don't want to say what I got and then find out that like, hey, the next three that I measure are completely different than that. So I want to make sure everything is exactly what a consumer gets before I start talking about those kind of numbers.
Right. And just to piggyback that, Chris and I had already talked about once that review is ready to go and ready to publish. And once it's been published, we'd love to have Chris back on to do another event like this to get more in depth so we can answer, more in-depth questions. And maybe to that same thing, the 4500, I don't know, again, if you can even speak to it with the 4100 versus the 4500 in terms of the laser dimming. Is that something either one of you guys want to address, or is that something that's still a question mark at this point?
I have every reason to believe it's improved. I was very happy to see that when here's one thing that I noticed when you have the dimming on the 4500, there are circumstances where if you access even the menu, it's very dim. And just the simple idea that the menu now, when you activate the menu, the dimming backs off. And so there's design changes in terms of specific performance. They're also still fine-tuning the firmware. So we got an update over the weekend where the dimming was improved versus the original firmware we had seen. So they're absolutely working on the dimming. I think it's probably best to wait until the final production. Chris, anything else you want to say there?
No, and that's the perfect point right there. JVC is continuing to work on this projector as we speak. Like I said, I gave them some feedback on what I saw initially. I initially saw some issues with the laser dimming, and I was told, yep, they already are aware of this. They're working on something. And I got firmware over the weekend that fixed pretty much everything that I saw that was an issue initially with the laser dimming. So, that's why I'm talking about, like, I don't really want to talk too much about the specifics of the projector, because what I saw isn't the final version that a consumer is going to see. And I requested that that's what I want to review.
And I think that speaks well of JVC too, because we've seen this too, where JVC actually is actively working and listening to feedback too. Some other manufacturers we've talked to and worked with are more resistant, let's say. So it's appreciated.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, there's definitely companies that, when you do, at least, in my experience, obviously as a reviewer, where, I always give feedback to a company as I'm doing a review, because the last thing I want to do is have a unit come in, I'm starting a review and finding all these issues. And I just like, oh, surprise, here's the review. And I saw all these issues. And then you find out that you got a bad unit or something like that. So obviously you want to give them the opportunity to either confirm your findings with something that they have there or anything else. In this case, before I was sent the unit, I was told that this was a work in progress unit, that it was not going to be final firmware. There were things that they were working on. There may even be some features that weren't activated, but they wanted me to get a look at it. start working on the review, because there's a lot of things that it doesn't matter what the firmware is going to be. You know, the physical parts of that projector were the same as what they're going to be. It's still the same 8K, you know, it's still the same DILA chip and all those things like that. But in terms of, you know, making sure the firmware is the actual final shipping firmware, in the case of the 4100, you know, they use a graded DILA chip. They grade their chips for the different models. Well, if mine's a pre-production unit, there's a chance that it's not going to perform as much as a production, because, you know, I'm thinking of it as a manufacturer. Do I want to put my graded chips in a unit that, you know, is basically just going to be tossed around for samples or whatever else like that? You know, might not be the part. So I wanted to make sure what I'm going to report on is exactly what a consumer could expect to buy. Obviously, there's always a little bit of sample variance and stuff like that, but, you know, all of the firmware finalized, things like that. I want to make sure we're representing the product as good as possible. And I do that with any company. So,
Yep. So let's talk about one more model. And I thank you, Chris, and thank you, John. So the RS 2100. This is maybe the most exciting one purely because of price, but we are bringing true DILA performance and blue Essen laser technology to market at under $10,000 retail, $99.99 to be precise, also coming in October. This is 2200 lumens, 8K EShift. Now, this is the original two-way EShift from the RS 3000. But we're now able to feed it with that new HDMI with either 8K 60 or 4K 120 inputs. This model has 40,001 native contrast, again, infinite dynamic contrast. The only other notable difference here is it doesn't have that separate cinema filter. So it's roughly in the 90 to 93% of DCI color coverage. So very good color coverage, but not quite the 100% of the more premium models. This has the installation modes, lens memories for ultra widescreen, and again, 3-year warranty with 1-year, first-year advanced replacement. So again, coming in October. I'm also going to talk about a couple of specific technology features, and then we're going to go to our live demo. There's some new EDID settings for best compatibility. So we now have 3 different EDID options, and they can be set independently for each input, which is very nice. So you can operate the newest gaming consoles and also reliably operate potentially much older legacy, you know, maybe a 5-year-old Oppo Blu-ray player. So EDID A, B, and C, and we'll show you that. Along with the other gaming functionality, people are curious about the low latency. And I've got a very simple thought here. The best of any premium projector. You like that mic drop there, John?
Oh, it's a thing of beauty.
Thank you. I put a lot of effort into that for you.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to give specific numbers today, but I've seen the numbers, and they beat any other premium home theater projector that's currently out there. If low latency is important, you're going to be very happy. A couple of considerations to kind of create your own game mode. Some of the picture modes that we're best known for, including Frame Adapt HDR and even the new HDR 10 Plus, require extra processing. So those modes do not give you the best, the lowest latency. So that's where you might actually want to revert to the regular HDR 10 picture mode. And then you can turn on the low latency, which grays out when you're using low latency. You can't use the dynamic dimming, and there's certain other combinations on these new models, certain either or kind of features. This is just one of them. But so you turn on low latency, dynamic dimming is off, and now you're going to have your best performance in terms of your lowest latency. Also be aware that that actual lag time will vary just a little bit based on the resolution and the frame rate of your signal. And specifically what we're talking about when we're operating, you know, one of these controllers here, and when we're pushing the button, we want to immediately see the result of that on the screen without any delay, so that we can have the most responsive performance when we're trying to play that video game. Couple of other notes on laser functions and some other things. Laser life, again, 20,000 hours. Interesting thing that at least I thought it was interesting. That's a 2.5-hour movie every day for 20 years. That's a lot. The laser has
the half-life, right? Not full laser.
Exactly.
Life,
that's to the half-life. Thank you, Chris. And that's based on using it in high laser. So if you use it in medium laser or low laser, you're obviously going to get even more hours out of that light engine. The laser does have 3 settings, low, medium, and high, like we said. And what you may not have known, these new models have over 1,000 steps of dynamic dimming. So that's kind of cool. Clear motion drives are frame interpolation. That's improved. We look at more frames of video for more accurate results. MPC is our detail enhancement and our noise reduction functions. And that's been redone. And there's some new noise reduction modes. I have not tried those out. And again, the new scaling engine for better results, even with things like 1080p, cable and satellite content. So all those are interesting. I mentioned there's some improvements to Frame Adapt HDR and Theater Optimizer, and I am going to switch to that Nikon SLR, and I am going to turn off the lights in my room. And I trust that you're hopefully seeing this. I'm going to stop my PowerPoint screen share. And Brendan, I trust that this is being seen full size.
It is.
Awesome. So this is that new Xbox. And hang on, just what I want to show it to you. There we go. I want to turn on my info screen here and confirm to you that you're seeing 4K. This is something you've probably never seen before on a premium home theater projector. Actual 4K resolution, that's the 2160p there on the second line at 120 frames per second. And obviously, I understand you're not going to see a full 120 frames per second through Zoom. That would be pretty remarkable. But also 10-bit RGB color, BT 2020 colorimetry, and high dynamic range. And again, I'm going to turn it off just for a second. And this is, again, from Ubisoft. I just think it's very cool that we offer this functionality. And I'm not aware of any other premium home theater projector that can do this right now. And again, you're seeing it live. So we're going to go back to the menu, and I'm going to go to the Frame Adapt HDR settings. Again, this is our dynamic tone mapping picture mode, and I'm going to show you a couple things here. So we are able to apply dynamic tone mapping to any 4K HDR content, and we can analyze it either frame by frame or scene by scene. We added that theater optimizer last year, so you can input the characteristics of your screen, and then it knows your throw distance, and it can fine tune the picture based on that. Last year with theater optimizer, the user had to select either low, mid, or high to fine tune the picture either to their specific room or to their personal preference. This year, we now have refined that a little further. We have an automatic mode, and then we also have 5 manual settings if you really want to dial it in either to your personal taste or to your specific environment. But for most people, we believe you'll be able to leave it on automatic and just kind of set and forget and enjoy whatever it is you want to watch. Within the theater optimizer menu, here you see where you input your screen information, and you'll notice one thing that's new is we now have a choice of aspect ratio, 16:9, 17:9, or CinemaScope. And keep in mind, you set the theater optimizer separately for each installation mode or lens memory. So you might have a 16:9 image area, and you can put in the screen size there. And you might also have a 235 image area, and you can put in that on its own lens memory. And it also is much faster when it changes. Last year, I noticed that the theater optimizer slowed it down just a little bit, and with the new firmware, it got a lot faster. So I was very happy to see that. Once you put in your data here, you press set, it does the processing, and now it's fine-tuned to your particular screen in your particular room. Because again, understand it also knows the throw distance, because it knows where your zoom is set and it knows your screen size. So that's a pretty cool feature. The next thing I want to show you is we're going to go over one tab on the menu, and automatic picture mode select. Their key parameters or flags in all the most popular signals that the JVC projector can recognize. So it knows when you're watching standard dynamic range content, and you can choose which picture mode you want to use. I like the natural preset. If you're using 3D, same idea. You might set up a particular preset for 3D, and maybe you save that in one of your user memories. HDR10, that includes Dolby Vision content. I would choose Frame Adapt. Again, there's several choices. And Hybrid Log Gamma, which is broadcast HDR, I would choose Hybrid Log Gamma. So once you've set that up, anyone in the family can use the projector without any concern about a mismatch between the signal type and the projector, picture mode. It's all completely automatic. And the last thing on this page that I'll show you is this is where that EDID setting is. And as you see, you can independently set that. EDID A is for 8K 60 or 4K 120, up to that. EDID B is for up to 4K 60p, and EDID C is for older legacy 1080p up to 60 frames per second. So you can set that independently for each input. And there you go.
I'll chime in real quick on this, just so all of the participants here hear me ask JVC for it. On your automatic input selection that you were talking about for signal types, I have a request for one that says wide color gamut non-HDR.
Chris, how did I know you were going to mention that? And I'm sure you've also asked Rob about that.
Oh, I think I brought it up at a meeting about 2 years ago.
You
when
did,
we discussed something
yes.
along those lines, but I'll just say it one more time so that people know I have asked.
You have asked, and I don't know why it's not easier. You know what? I can say conclusively, you've made many good recommendations that our factory has indeed followed up on. And Brendan is very kindly reminding me to turn my lights back on. And I don't know why that particular one has proven to be a little harder to implement, but duly noted, Mr. Deering.
Yeah. So speaking of, well, Chris has got that great question. Do we have a moment here to answer? So there's a couple of these stacked up. So I want to fire those off. This was a purely practical question that was asked before. So you did cover the throw distance and the throw range on the 4100/Z9. Is it the same as the 3000? Is that the same?
Yes.
Throw? Okay.
It is.
And so are the other two units with the standard lens, are they the same as the 2000,
Yes.
1000?
Mhm.
So that carries over. And we talked about this in the earlier session. The Chief mount is still usable, the Chief, because it's the same chassis.
I'm not going to say it is or isn't. I do believe that, in fact, that might be our next slide. Well, it's coming up, but I'll address that. We've got nothing but love and respect for Chief, and I have no doubt Chief will have a full range of suitable mounts for these projectors, and Chief currently has mounts that are absolutely suitable for these. I do know that some of their mounts are spec'd at 50 pounds, and 2 of these projectors are over that. And my suspicion is that Chief would probably advise against using those mounts with the 2 heavier projectors.
The 2 heavier projectors. So other questions that's there, is the remote new? It's the same remote, correct?
It's the exact same remote. At least the one they sent me. Is this the final remote? I'm sure that this is, I wouldn't rule out that there might be one button that is repurposed but I also wouldn't rule out that there are no changes. The basic remote's the same as last year.
Okay, and then this was something that I was excited about. We talked about it earlier. Kris Deering kind of confirmed that noise level on the 4100 is pretty low, though I don't think you tested it in high altitude mode, but can certainly confirm. By the way, I have an RS3000 and I'm at 6,200 feet here. I know JVC wants me to run it in high altitude mode, but I don't. Yeah,
Sean.
Kris on the camera, who you probably can't see, is waving his finger at me. But the 4100 in its standard, Kris Deering, would you like to kind of address that real quick?
Oh, good. I want to make sure.
Can't answer to high altitude, but we can answer.
No, I can't answer high altitude. That's actually a good question. I probably should have listened to that. I did do some measurements on the 4100 that I had here. Obviously, I had the RS 4500. I reviewed it for Sound and Vision. I owned it for almost a year. And one of my chief complaints in that review was that in high laser, it really was kind of almost unusable, especially as it ramps up and down. I kind of said that, you know, for the if you really wanted to use high performance, you would have needed a hush box or to put it in a room behind the room. I know some people that use it in high and, you know, they keep their room pretty cool and it didn't really ramp up that much and it didn't bother them with the content playing. But it was definitely one of my biggest complaints about the RS 4500. So obviously when they said that this was going to have 3,000 lumens like the RS 4500, my first thing was like, oh, it's going to be loud again. So I can say unequivocally, at least the unit that I got in was actually quieter in high laser mode than my RS 3000 is in high lamp mode. I did SPL measurements on both of them. The RS 4100 was usually about 4 to 5 dB quieter than the RS 3000 is in high lamp.
Yeah.
I also, like I said, I just did some testing with Jim Peterson. Jim Peterson actually uses an RS 4500 in the Lumigen demo theater. And we had it in that room and he continually was talking about the fact of how quiet it was. In fact, we had it set up on a table so that the output vents were less than a foot from our head. And we were in there for 2.5 hours with nothing on but the projector, no sound or anything like that. And most of the time, if his AC kicked on or anything, I could hear the air coming out of those vents more than that. And in fact, we had an Oppo connected up to it directly, and I had a little portable hard drive connected to the Oppo, and we were commenting on the fact that the hard drive connected to the Oppo was louder than the projector. So when it would spin.
I'm particularly excited about that. I have a 3000, which was the overall winner on our projector shootout a couple years ago. But I'm excited about, as soon as possible, we will have a 4100 for anybody who's local to us or anybody who wants to fly in to see in operation. So there will be one hanging in my house before long. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about is quietness. So is the bright corner issue, we talked about that earlier today. As I understand the answer, just to try to make it quick, you guys are saying, hey, it's something JVC is saying it's something we're always working on to minimize. One of the things that we often talk about is Kris Deering is available. If you are, often when somebody buys a projector from the screening room, we actually have it shipped directly to Kris Deering, who will not only calibrate it, but do a QC. And he checks over to make sure everything is kind of up to spec and working properly. And one of the things he checks is bright corners. Now, it's not like perfection.
I'm not going to guarantee that you're not going to get bright corners on a JVC, but you know, I've commented on this a bunch of times on forums and everything like that. Is it an issue? Absolutely. You know, JVC's aware of it. Everybody's kind of aware of it. How much of a bright corner you have is going to vary from unit to unit. It's almost impossible to judge that. If you put up a full black field and you let your eyes adjust, the likelihood is you're going to see, you know, a little bit of a raised elevation in one corner or another, or even multiple corners and stuff. I always look at that as like, I've seen units that are bad enough that I've seen it in content when I'm watching something that actually, like maybe it has black bars or whatever, but I could probably count on one hand how many times I've ever, and I mean, this is over, a decade of experience with JVC projectors easily, have been able to actually see that with real content. Sure, I would love to see the uniformity for black go up, just like I'd like to see them improve their contrast despite being the best that there is for this, and at these kind of price points. But I generally don't see it as an issue. And again, when you're watching real content, you can put up a piece of paper, you could sit there and look at a black field all day, but that's not what you watch. And do I look for it? Yes, I make sure that it's not egregious where I'm like, oh, wow, that's really bad or anything. And that goes for anything. If I'm QCing a projector, I want to make sure that there isn't something like a shading issue, an alignment issue that can't be fixed with the pixel adjuster or things like that. Make sure that it looks like it's in with reasonably in what I would consider to be, in spec for a projector and things like that. Is it way too low on light? Is the color gamut like, something is wrong with this projector?
Right.
Anything, but at least on the one unit, again, I can't talk to, I have not gotten a production sample of this, but the sample that I did get, it was probably one of the best I've ever seen for bright corners. Does that mean that the ones that you're going to buy, a couple of months from now are going to be exactly the same? I don't know, but it was something that I did notice because I did a bunch of tests for black floor, and we actually commented again on that with Jim over the last 2 days because he noticed as well that there wasn't anything on the sample I had. So
yeah, and I think that was the exact word I was looking for. You're looking for something egregious, right? Because I think some people will get concerned about something that they will never see with actual content, and so it becomes kind of moot at that point. So, as a question for Chris, is the HDR improvement is significant enough over the RS3000? And I don't know if you can really even speak to that at this point.
Is the HDR improvement
significant over the 3000 on the 4100?
Well,
I assume.
I've got them both right here, and I was going back and forth, and I used the Meg, and I used Blade Runner 2049, and I also used I looked at Spears and Munsell. I also looked at Mad Max, all my favorite difficult discs. And in every case, and I don't know if I want to attribute it purely to improvements in frame adapt HDR or partially to that high contrast optical block or to something else, but in every case, I saw what I felt was better performance. Like on the Meg, there's a couple of scenes on the RS3000, they were okay, but they still looked a little blown out. And on the 4100, much less so, much more dialed in and with better color. And on Blade Runner 2049, which is notoriously dim, I noticed it was consistently brighter. And I could give you a variety of other examples. But I thought in every case, I could see an improvement from the 3000 to the new 4100. I thought.
Kris Deering, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I'll talk about that more in my review.
That's what I figured.
There is the changes, like you said. The one thing that I really liked that they saw was they made it easier to do the theater optimizer. It's less gray area there and how you enter in the screen size and what screen you have. That was really nice to see that done. And then obviously the other big improvement that I saw was the fact that it does have the auto, versus the low, medium, high, where you still kind of have to put the onus on the client to pick the mode. And a lot of people don't understand, well, what's the difference between low, medium, and high or anything like this. And I will say that the auto worked really, really well. The tone mapping is excellent. It's far, far beyond anything else that I've seen in a projector, internally. And it, just like I had said before, when I had done the review of the theater optimizer, when it first came out, it handles itself extremely well, even against external boxes that I've tested. It did a very good job, and it does work in conjunction with the laser dimming. It looks like the improvement in how much light that you have, and with the laser dimming and stuff like that, I definitely saw some improvement. How much and stuff like that I'll go into with the review.
So Mike Franks asks, will there be any HDR tone mapping updates to the NX line? That's for you, Chris Deutsch.
I believe when you say NX line, I assume you mean the original RS.
Last year, the RS 1000.
Yeah, the
2000,
RS
3000.
1000, 2000, 3000, the NX 579. I would never say never, but I'm not aware of any, and I would think at this point in time that those products are fairly mature in terms of their development, and I don't have any expectation of anything else.
Okay, and then this one's I think we kind of generally know this. How close are these in brightness, 2200 to 3000 lumens after calibration? Probably too soon to know to some degree, but I think we're anticipating the same 20 to 30% reduction in brightness after calibration. Is that fair to say?
God, I hope it's not 20 to 30%.
Yeah, I don't remember I know that your spec is always based on the high bright mode. Like if you have a problem with brightness, you always report to JVC. They want to know what it is with profile off,
Right.
Basically raw light engine.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I don't think I've ever measured, raw light output because I know it's a mode nobody ever uses. So as far as like out of the box versus calibrated, I just did. So again, I never did a calibration on the 4100 because I knew it wasn't going to be the final sample. But I did do a calibration literally today on an RS 3000 out of the box. And I think it went from on the screen that, obviously that I set up for the customer and everything, it went from 103 nits to 97 nits after calibration.
Wow,
So
that's hardly anything. That's
yeah,
terrific.
it wasn't that much. It didn't lose hardly any light with calibration, but again, compared to the spec numbers that are based on profile off, I'm not sure on that one. I guess maybe I'll measure that when I get the final review unit in to see where it meets that. So
right, because that was the question against the actual spec number on the merchandising material. So that's a good question that maybe we'll revisit. So
and those are all good points. And yes, the JVC lumens are based on high bright. But I think we want to wait for the final production and for someone with Chris's level of knowledge to give us the real number.
Yeah. And so,
and I will say that, the initial measurements I did on the RS 4100 were definitely more in line with what I saw from the 4500. So it wasn't, something where it's like, oh, they're saying 3000 lumens. It was comparable to what I've seen from the other, your other 3000 lumen projectors. So.
Right.
And,
so
if I'm not mistaken, the 4500 was calibrating around without the color filter around 2450 to 2550.
Yeah, I think so.
But base and it was at 3000 and in the high bright. So I mean, you're talking maybe a 15% hit in that based on those numbers. That's what I recall for the 4500. So okay. I would think the 4100 would be more in line with that. So I've just got maybe 2 or 3 more slides and then the PowerPoint's done. But I mean, all of this is.
Well, there's 2 more questions. You want to finish your PowerPoint? We'll hit the other 2 questions.
We can also keep talking.
No, well, Chris, why don't you finish up your PowerPoint and we'll hit these 2.
Okay, so this slide simply talks about there's a lot of bright shiny objects we're looking at today. But the foundation of what makes JVC would be our DILA imaging chips. And, there's 3 of these inside each of the projectors. And besides, each of them is responsible for a particular color. The characteristic that they're known for is the best black level and the best native contrast in the industry. Of course, also native 4K resolution. And so just keep in mind that this is ultimately what makes JVC the most unique is the fact that we have these DILA imaging chips. I have a picture of the back of the projector so you can see it's a little different design. The power cord's now in the middle. We've got these larger air intakes for the laser cooling. You can see how it sticks out a little bit. So, I mean, the dimensions may be slightly different, like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch compared to the previous generation, but it's really the same footprint. What has changed is the weight. which is, basically 6 or 7 pounds heavier across the board. And again, do pay attention to the mount that you use with these, and definitely make sure your mount is rated to handle the weight of these projectors. I can tell you, when I lifted up that RS 4100, that is one solid projector. I'm sure, Chris, you would agree. That is definitely, you're earning your keep when you lift that up. The weight is an issue. Get the right mount. Also, if you want to take advantage of any of the high-speed HDMI functionality, or I should say maybe ultra high speed at this point, make sure you get a 48 gigabit per second compatible HDMI cable. And, and particularly if you're a gamer and you have one of the new gaming consoles that supports that. The DLA RS 1000 will continue, at least for the time being, at $59.99. That is a phenomenal value on what is our entry-level DILA projector. And there's also a few of the RS 2000s left if you want a little wider DCI color coverage and a little higher contrast with that dual aperture light engine. If the laser features don't have any appeal to you, but those other picture enhancements do, you might want to look at a DLA RS 2000 while they're still available. This is a comparison chart, and I'm not going to really drill down here, but the stuff in green is kind of just a nice recap of what makes JVC special. The frame adapt HDR on every model, we do it. That's our dynamic tone mapping, and our competition does not offer anything close to that. We're now bringing laser down to very exciting new price points. Across the board, we offer more lumen brightness at any given price point. We have all glass lenses throughout the entire line. We're doing great stuff with this 8K EShift X. And we have all the latest, greatest HDMI connectivity. We've always had the lead in contrast performance, particularly native contrast. We have models with 100% DCI at price points that the competition cannot match. And we also offer lens memory for ultra widescreen viewing, again, at price points that nobody else is doing for a native 4K projector. So lastly, and I know, John, you've had a couple of these sold. There are customers that want laser, but are looking for a little lower price point. This is a DLP projector, the LXNZ3. We have it in both black and in white. And for a $3,500 retail to get 3,000 lumens with blue laser technology is pretty remarkable. It's got a nice little zoom range on it, and some a nice amount of lens shift for some installation flexibility, and it hits a strong price point. And so yes, we are very much laser focused, and we've got a little something no matter where you land in that spectrum of prices. That's basically what I got. So I'm ready for a few more questions and just to talk some more projector stuff.
All right. So I have that comparison chart is really cool, right? I mean, and for anybody who's worried about maybe taking notes here or something like that, we will be posting the webinar from earlier today and one from tonight up on our website. And I would say it's worth checking out both of them, because we dove more deeply into quite a bit different topics each time. It wasn't a repeat of what we did earlier today, I wouldn't say. But do you have that comparison chart as a PDF or something that you can send to us?
I do. And I also told Brendan if he wants to just screen capture that, if that works, that's fine. But yeah, I'll be glad to send it to you.
Yeah, because if anybody wants that, obviously they could email us and we'll be happy to send it to them. So we'll finish out these questions here, and then I had just some general thoughts. In fact, the last question here I wanted to going to speak to. You spoke to this earlier today, Chris Deutsch. So if you want to speak to it again, I'll probably upgrade the projector before this happens. But if I don't, is there going to be any way to replace the laser when it reaches, say, 20,000 hours?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm happy to answer that. I really stressed to my team that I wanted an answer to this before today, and I got one. JVC definitely understands the importance of this, and we do intend to offer a replacement option for units, outside of the warranty. Pricing has not been finalized, but we're looking to make it. This is my choice of words, my attempt to convey what we want to do. We want to make it a legitimate option for people who want to keep their projector but need to renew the light source. So no pricing that I can talk about today, but it is our intention to offer that.
Okay, so another question that we have here, again, it's interesting to see my comments being translated in real time into mangled English. So a question, the RS3000 is going to be discontinued. I don't want to mess with trying to turn that off at this point because we kind of, everybody's getting tired. Chris Deutsch, particularly, I know you, how many of these have you done today? You've lost track.
Well, you can hear it a little from my voice. I would have to count it up. I've probably 12 hours worth.
Yeah. So
of talking.
Thank you so much for hanging in there with us. And it's kind of fun coming at the end of the day because we're getting some of the accumulated questions.
Yeah.
I see that you and both Chris's have been checking on the forums to see what's kind of hanging out there. The question here is the 3000 is going to be discontinued. As a replacement is a new 4100. I would think the 3100 is more a replacement for the 3000, as it even seems to have higher performance, and the 4100 is a further step up. That's I just wanted to speak real quickly, and then Chris Deutsch, if you want to answer that more directly, but I don't want to discount the quality of that lens. I had the RS2000. Yeah. I had an RS3000 in our reference showroom. We do all these product shootouts. And as the owner of the company, one of the perks is everything that wins the product shootout goes in my house, right? So that becomes our reference showroom, and it's open for anybody who wants to see it. So the 3000 was hanging here for a long time for a reason I won't get into. I replaced it with a 2000, had it up there for about a month, and the 2000 looks terrific, but I definitely noticed I missed that lens. So the lens not only will look crisper and cleaner and purer is the word I've always used, but in dark scenes, and we noticed this when we did our projector shootout back in April of 2019, when we had the 2000 and 3000 side by side. When you were watching dark content, we had the 4K scan of Alien up there. There was definitely more depth, more sense of depth perception, more three-dimensionality with the lens on the 3000 than there was in the 2000. And the 2000 lens was still really good compared to, say, some of the competing projectors we had there. I would say that is a big difference, even though I understand what Paul, the person's asking the question here. In terms of features, yes, the 3100 has more features and has certain things that are better. But that lens does make a difference that was quite obvious to me after living with both for quite a while. So Chris Deutsch, if you would like to expound upon anything there.
Yeah, and the answer is fairly straightforward. The 2000, the 3000, are both transitioning to now the 2100 and the 3100, but they are new price points, and it's like any other technology. There's always some give and take, and what was excellent yesterday is no longer not excellent today. If you put a high value on the lens, you may like the 3000 better. On the other hand, there's also that HC optical block on the new model. And I mean, there's definitely give and take both ways, and they're a little bit different price points. So I'm sorry if I'm not giving a great answer, but you kind of have to do a little bit weighing the pros and the cons. The 4100 seems to be more of a direct replacement, at least based on current retail, to the RS 4500. Now, keep in mind that was introduced at a $35,000 retail, but over the life of that product, it's come down to 25,000. So the 4100 is a more direct. And someone's asking, would the 4100 be a legitimate consideration to replace my 4500 with Lumigen? Then I wouldn't get rid of your Lumigen. I mean, the Lumigen is so cool for so many different reasons. But the 4100 would be a nice update to the 4500. And again, the 4500 is a great product. It's been considered one of the absolute best home theater projectors for several years.
They're not going to drop the Lumigen. So
they're not going to drop the Lumigen. That's good.
The looming chin is what it says down below here. So the Lumigen certainly still brings some advantages, but that would be a heck of a combo, a 4100 with a Lumigen, I would say.
And for anyone that has a Lumigen, we're looking at the person who can make that product sing like no one else.
Right. That's why I have this slide up. I'd like Kris to speak a little bit about how remote calibration works and all that. And the only other thing I was going to say, I know you have a graded lens in the 2100, right? So it's going to be a high. You're hand selecting the lens in the 2100 versus the 2000.
No,
correct?
it's I would say the 2100 lens and the 2000 lens are very similar. I'm not aware of any.
I think he's confusing the 21 with the 3100. The 3100 is
3100. Sorry, 3100.
And then the 4100 has the 100 millimeter optics.
Right.
So the 3100 has a hand selected lens versus the 2100. So
even there, I'm not clear on that. I know the 3100 has better optics because it has the HC optical block. Whether or not the actual lens is any different or there's grading in those lenses, that I know there's grading in the DILA chips. I don't know. I can't speak to if there's grading in the lenses, and I prefer to err on the side of I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that we clarified that because I wasn't sure. Kris Deering, do you want to speak? I have your slide up here if you want to talk about your remote calibration and how that works. Because I had somebody asked that in the previous one. I don't think we ever really answered it.
Sure. So remote calibration kind of came about mainly during COVID. I actually offered it before COVID, but it's become a more, popular feature. So yes, I try to offer remote projection calibration services. This entails somebody shipping a projector to me, whether it's from them directly or through, they put an order in with the screening room or anybody else, or other retailers, but and then it's shipped to me directly. I QC it and then calibrate it, and then it's shipped on to the client. So basically they have a new projector that arrives in their home that's fully calibrated. Now, so people will say, well, how do you do that, compared to doing it in my house? There'd be differences and things. So what I try to do is I set up the projector to emulate your setup as much as possible within reason. So I find out what the distance is from the projector lens to the screen. I set up the projector here at that. I set the zoom so that it's the same image sizes that they would be getting based on their screen that they have at home. And then I have a huge amount of screen samples that cover pretty much almost all the screen materials that are available today. So I make sure that I put the same screen material up that the client is using in their home so that I'm taking all my measurements off of that same screen material. This allows me to do the calibration either, directly, if it was, just somebody sent me a JVC or any other brand, or if there's somebody that has like the Lumigen or something like that, I can use I can do it in conjunction with the Lumigen. And if they already have one, I can send them a file that they put into their Lumigen so that all of that data is in there. Or if they were purchasing one, I could do the same way. So it just provides something for somebody that wants a calibration that might be in an area that doesn't get serviced by calibrators. They want to have it specifically done by me, and I'm not going to be in an area, especially again with the COVID issues going on. Or they want to have a projector that arrives at their door, that's already calibrated, so obviously there's some things I can't do. I can't fine tune geometry and things like I would normally do when I'm in home. But the cost for a remote calibration isn't quite as much as I charge if I am going into somebody's home, simply because I know that there are some things that I can't do that I would be able to do there. But for the most part, it's essentially plug and play. You just have to kind of fine tune the lens shift, focus, and zoom to your screen, because there'll be the little bits of differences there, and then any kind of convergence or anything like that. Again, kind of more of the super fine tuning at the end, but as far as the actual calibration and tone mapping and all those things would be set up as optimally as possible.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if somebody buys a projector from us, which we're hoping that if you're looking at one of these, you're absolutely considering, and please contact us. These are going to be pretty tightly allocated going into the next few months. So we have a list that we're putting together, and we'll let you know what's going on and keep you updated as we go. So please get in contact with us, and especially with, again, the price points we're talking about here. What Chris offers, I think, is tremendous value add. In fact, what we do is we have the projector shipped directly to Chris, and then he ships it on to you after he's done with doing that calibration. That's not required, but we highly suggest it, recommend it. So just kind of wrapping things up as far as the screening room side of it. If you check out our website, the information's all screeningroomav.com. That's our email address there. On our blog site, we have some articles we're very proud of. We have that projector shootout from a couple of years ago, which still stands. I still stand behind it, and I think Chris does too. It would be interesting to see what some of the new stuff does. And then we have an article by Dr. Floyd Toole about his home theater system. And if you don't know who Floyd Toole is, you might want to Google him. He's probably the leading expert on speakers and rooms and acoustics. We have a newsletter sign up on our website. That's how a lot of people that are here joining us tonight found out about this. Like I said, we'll probably be following up with Chris after his review's out. We're talking about maybe doing some more of these with maybe Bill Hunt from the Digital Bits, some other people that would be interesting to our general audience. And so all of that's there. And so I'm just going to leave it. Chris Deutsch or Kris Deering, if you guys have any other thoughts you wanted to throw out there. I know we talked about screen sizes, all that, but this is a much more advanced kind of discussion here about these particular projectors. And I know we're getting late here, but if anybody has any final thoughts they want to share, fire away.
I just want to say thank you for everyone that took all the time to do this, and to listen to us talk about projectors and to hear about the new JVCs. We really, really value that, and we appreciate it. And John, thank you. And Chris, thank you. And everyone else that works with John, Brendan and Bea and Dave, and I know other folks as
Zach
well.
and Aaron, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There you go, Zach, Aaron, yeah.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, and so please fire off any questions. We try to answer them authoritatively and as technically accurately. That's a horrible phrase. With as much technical accuracy as we can in terms of like speccing in the right screen size for the room, what your seating distance should be, looking at acoustically transparent screens versus ambient light rejecting screens, all that kind of stuff. We've done a lot of this testing. Chris has done more testing than us, but we do a lot where we bring out different screen materials, different projectors, and we compare them side by side in controlled conditions so that when we're talking to you, generally speaking, it's something we've actually laid our eyes on and tried to do a legitimate comparison. So thank you again for everybody. It's about almost an hour and a half here. I think looks like, yep, got JVC. Thank you for stepping up the game. I kind of wish you kept making the RS2000. So some good comments in here. Thank you everybody for your comments and your questions. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Good night.
Good night.